Hi, everyone. Welcome to Dean's Chat, where we discuss all things podiatric medicine. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Jensen. I'm the Dean at the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine and the host for the Dean's Chat podcast. My guest today, Dr. Leland Jaffe, is a rising star in podiatric medicine. He is currently an associate professor and the associate dean of clerkship and residency placement at the Rosalind Franklin University William M. Scholl College of Podiatric Medicine. Welcome to Dean's Chat, Dr. Jaffe.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I know that we've kind of been talking about when we can get a time to do it, so I'm finally glad we could get this together. Thank you.
Yeah, feeling is mutual.
That's great. You know, Leland, we go with first names on Dean's Chat. It's kind of a fireside chat vibe. Is that all right with you, Leland and Jeff?
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Right. Sounds good. You know, the first thing I wanted to talk about is your social media savviness, Leland. I talked to your APMSA reps, Elena and Elizabeth and Alyssa, and they said, as soon as we're done with this Dean's Chat, we have to get it in Dr. Jaffe's hands.
Absolutely. Savviness is a very generous word. I think if you were to ask my friends 10 years ago that I'd be the chair of social media here at the college, I think they would probably call you crazy, because I would say up until a couple of years ago, I didn't even do much on Facebook or any social media whatsoever. So my entry into that space is actually quite new for me.
Well, I can tell you enjoy it because I follow you on Instagram and LinkedIn. And maybe the way to kick it off today, Leland, is to talk about your new initiative. Your new website, LelandJaffeDPM.com, is just a wonderful educational website for students and practitioners alike.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the motivation behind that was really thinking about my journey into academic medicine. I started out in private practice, and I was in practice for about 4.5 years before I moved into a full academic position up here at Scholl College. And me, like a lot of professors, I would think, don't have formal education in being involved in higher education. And so a lot of my learning was on the job once I came here up in North Chicago on the Scholl campus. I definitely sought out mentorship from more seasoned professors, but a lot of it was on the job training. So I wanted to try to create a space where educators, both seasoned and new educators, can have a space to collaborate, to discuss best practices, to share in how to challenge this new generation of learners. Because I think the way that students learn today is very different than even 10 years ago. And the pandemic definitely escalated that. So that was really the motivation behind it. And as I was creating it, though, I'm like, I'd be remiss if I didn't create a space also for some academics as well, too. I mean, the educator inside of me just has to include the students and the residents into that space as well, too. So it's at this point, only about a month published, but that's really the two directions that I see it going at this time.
Well, that's great. I mean, when I see it online, I naturally just click on it because I like your little vignettes and, little things like putting on a Jones compression bandage. I mean,
Sure.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting, and I think it's great for the students, and I think residents will benefit. So I congratulate you on that effort.
I appreciate that.
So, Leland, we'll probably swing back into this a little bit later, but let's go back in time now and talk a little bit about how you found out about podiatric medicine and what led you to actually going to school at the William M. Scholl College of Podiatric Medicine.
Sure. The answer is actually pretty simple. My dad is a podiatrist. He's retired. He was in practice for many years, and that really brought podiatric medicine into the crosshairs, if you will. When I went to undergraduate at U of I in Champaign-Urbana, and being on a Big Ten campus and being having the opportunity to be exposed to a lot of different facets of medicine, which I always knew I wanted to be into medicine. I knew I did thrive in the sciences and the math, so I always was scientific minded in a sense. But being able to work at U of I and being exposed to sports medicine and that domain is really what really solidified it for me. The irony of that is my patient population today is very much not sports medicine related. So it's definitely taken a bit of a turn in terms of my my clientele and most of the patients that I treat. But that was really the motivation is through my dad, but also through being able to experience it firsthand in terms of the different avenues that podiatric medicine can take.
That's interesting because we always have legacy students. I've got 3 in my current first year class whose parents are podiatrists. What was it like growing up podiatry?
It was great. I saw my dad as just a general practitioner. Honestly, I remember getting flu shots and vaccines in my kitchen, right? And so I never disassociated podiatric medicine with just being in medicine and being a doctor. And so I knew that is the direction that I wanted to take. But yeah, no, it was fun. I got to at an early age observe surgeries in the hospital. I got to go to the surgical center and observe really the hands-on nature of the profession, which really caught my interest as well too. Going into the clinic and really seeing the lifelong patients that he had and those bonds that were created also ignited that spark too. I'm like, this is something that I feel like I'm a people person. I feel like the relationships and the respect that the mutual respect they had for one another between him and his staff and his patients was something I definitely looked up to as well. So, I mean, that was something I knew I wanted to take on. Also, my dad worked for years with the residents at the modern day, it's the SSM DePaul Residency in St. Louis. Many, many years ago, it was out of a different hospital that doesn't exist in St. Louis, but I got to see his role in education at a different level, but certainly in that respect as well.
I was going to say education's in your blood and podiatric medicine's in your blood.
I think so.
That's fabulous. So, it's interesting because, we're all recruiting students and a lot of students, it's a eye-opening experience to realize what podiatric medicine is. And they kind of fall into different camps. There's students like legacy students like yourself, but then there's others that didn't know about podiatry till they were treated by a podiatrist or had a family member. Are you seeing the same thing in Chicago?
Absolutely. I get to read a lot of personal statements for prospective students. And a lot of it is just really through, they were a dancer, they were on a sports team, family member had diabetes and they took them to doctor's appointments, or they helped with dressings of chronic wounds at home. And really that helped really be educated about the field of podiatric medicine. So absolutely.
No, that's great. And I've also noticed a trend. We have a lot of scribes applying to podiatric medicine because they're a scribe for a podiatric physician. They know exactly.
Or medical assistants too. We have a handful of medical assistants that really got motivated by the people they work for to take it to the next level.
For sure. So when you were down in Illinois, it was a natural step, I imagine, to go to the Scholl College. How were your 4 years at Scholl?
4 years at Scholl were great. Some of my closest friends to this day are my classmates at Scholl. I had an excellent class. We were the campus itself is about an hour north of downtown Chicago. So it was a really good place to be away from the hustle and bustle of downtown Chicago and really get to focus on moving from undergraduate to a medical-based curriculum, because I went straight from undergrad to podiatric college, so I didn't have any gap years. And so the workload was certainly an adjustment. Being able to manage professional school was a little bit of an adjustment too. So it was a nice location to be able to be distanced from that. Faculty were very hands-on, which I appreciated too, and very small group type learning experiences, which was helpful. And it was also interesting too, back when I started podiatric college in 2004, and at that point too, the college had a emphasis on interprofessional education, which 20 years ago really wasn't so much the healthcare model as it is today. And so it was nice being shoulder to shoulder with allopathic colleagues in physical therapy and PA and other students to really be able to speak the same language, be able to know how each other's roles fit within this healthcare domain, if you will.
Right. We take that for granted today, but 20 years ago, that wasn't the case.
Exactly right. It was a little bit more siloed.
For sure. Who was your dean back in early 2000s?
It was Dean Albright.
Yes, absolutely. And Dr. Todd, was Dr. Todd there too at the time?
I do not think so. No.
Okay. All right. I was just I'm trying to get my timing in place. Now, after you graduated, you did your residency in the Chicagoland area also. Yes.
So I went to St. Joseph Hospital and I spent my first year at a DVA in North Chicago. So I stayed in the Chicagoland area for the next 3 years. Really enjoyed it. It's funny, the location of the hospital I worked at, most people would think it was fantastic. It was right on Lakeshore Drive, really beautiful location, but from a residence perspective, I spent all day in the hospital staring out onto the lake, watching people enjoy the beach and the lakefront. So it was a little bit of a tease at times, but no, it was a good time. I enjoyed the patient population. We worked really in two hospitals primarily. One was in what a lot of people know as Lincoln Park, Lakeview area, which is right on the north side of Chicago, right along the lakefront. And then we also got to work in a hospital called St. Anthony's, which is on the southwest side. So a much different demographic, a much different patient population. So I thought, just being able to service both of those different communities was a good learning experience as a resident.
That makes sense. Our residents in Colorado, when I was practicing there and we started a residency, they lived vicariously also through people in the mountains and skiing when they were working. So I think they can relate to you watching people on sailboats.
Oh yeah, driving down Lakeshore Drive every day after work was a little bit torture, but it was a good time, nevertheless.
Very good. So Now, I think it was a brilliant move on your part to go from residency program into practice instead of trying to dive right into academics. Can you share? You were 4 or 5 years in private practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So to be perfectly honest, I had no intention of going into academics. That was never on the 10-year goal. When I first started practice in St. Louis, I was in a small practice. I worked in 2 hospitals. I worked in a couple different surgery centers, and I was fortunate enough also to be on 2 different wound care panels. So I was really busy. I was getting a lot of surgical cases, and I was on a really good trajectory. So there was absolutely nothing that I disliked about the practice I was in. And so at day one, though, similar to my dad, I had residents scrubbing my cases. So it was a very quick role reversal. I graduated June 30th from residency, and then early July, my first cases, I have residents scrubbing with me. So it was a very quick role reversal, which honestly did take a little bit of time to grow and develop that muscle in terms of being able to teach in the OR.
Right.
But it was something that I enjoyed more and more as the years moved forward. So, and coming to Scholl, it was actually really nice because I can honestly say I was running towards something, not running away from something in terms of when I moved from my private practice to Scholl. It was something I was actively seeking, not running away from a practice. I had a really good situation and worked with a lot of great people. And to be honest with you, it was harder to leave practice than to build a practice, because you have so many patients that rely on you. And it was really difficult to leave. That was a decision that I did not take lightly. But timing is everything. So in terms of how I made my way back to Scholl College, and this is the true story. I got brought on as the foot and ankle wound care provider at a wound care center in Southern Illinois, in Edwardsville, which is just over the border for the listeners that don't know where that is. It's about 10 miles into Illinois, but right on St. Louis. And part of the onboarding process was you had to be trained by their system. So the training was in Chicago. I went up to Chicago to do the training, and I met a lot of old friends and colleagues, some of which worked with the university. And someone recently had vacated a faculty position, and they were basically asking me, do I have interest in making that type of move? And at the time, I really was somewhat at a crossroads because I wanted more involvement with the residency, but I really wasn't in a position to be able to take over a bigger leadership or teaching role within the residency. So I was somewhat at a crossroads. And so that was really when it was brought on my radar that I could perhaps make a full-time move into academics. And so that's how it really got brought to my attention. So timing really was everything for me.
I think timing's everything in those kind of moves because it really shakes the foundation of your livelihood, where you're living, your family. Now, were you married at the time with kids?
I was married. And my wife is from Chicago, so most people think I moved back for her, and that is not true. She had a wonderful job at WashU. She was doing clinical research with the surgery department at WashU, and I honestly had to pull her away from her job. So most people think we moved back for my in-laws and my wife's side of the family, but that is not the truth.
Oh, very good. It was interesting because when I used to work in the residency program, we had a lot of clerks around. So we had fourth-year students in residence. And really, I think the biggest shock to my system was starting to relate to incoming students, first-year students, second-year students, because they're so involved in the basic sciences, realizing boards coming up. The podiatric medicine courses almost took a back seat initially.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you noticed the same, but
yeah, absolutely.
So that's always that. I found that to be an interesting transition. So when you moved to you live north of Chicago at the Scholl College, you were an assistant professor. What were your initial responsibilities?
Yeah, a good question. So my first course that I rebuilt from the ground up was dermatology.
Okay.
I've become the dermatology person here on campus. I've taught it for 9 years now. And yeah, it was a great opportunity to revamp a course. And that was the first time I was tasked with building learning objectives, building a syllabus, building lecture material. I mean, when you bring a new lecture into the lecture hall to engage students, it's a little nerve-wracking. You don't know how it's going to be received. You don't know necessarily how long it's going to take. And but yeah, that was my first course that I coordinated, and I also assisted with a number of the third-year courses. We have a few courses that are called capstones, which are really more of a clinical application of the didactic material that's taught in the second year. And so I was able to work alongside other faculty that have been here for a much longer period of time to learn from their style of teaching, learn the curriculum, learn the coursework, because there is a learning curve for that as well too.
Oh yeah, that's no easy task taking on a new course. Now, not at all. Did you use ACPM's curriculum guide at all to hit objectives?
Absolutely.
Very good. Yes. I had to put a plug in for AA, you know.
I did. I absolutely did. And that was incredibly helpful. So thank you.
No, it's a lot of people doing a lot of hard work. And we utilize it when we bring new faculty on at Midwestern also, because it's a wonderful roadmap for a new faculty member who is so different to, you know, map out an entire course as opposed to giving a lecture at a meeting, for example.
Right. Absolutely. It was very helpful. I think being able to use that as, like you say, a roadmap was exactly what I did.
Oh, that's excellent. So do you teach courses then? So your main course is derm. When did you start taking on an administrative role?
That was about 2 years ago. January will be 2 years.
Okay. How do you find that?
I love it, first of all. So one of the things I love about it is, number one, being able to engage with our students once they leave campus. So prior to this role, our students in January would go out onto their clerkships during their third year, and a lot of them I might not interact with much until graduation. So being able to really be involved with them really on a weekly basis through graduation is something I really appreciate. And that organically leads to me being able to develop alumni relationships as well too, and try to maintain connections with these students once they become residents, and really once they become attendings as well too. So that's really what I love about it. It was definitely a shift in my workload because taking on administrative responsibilities was a little bit of a learning curve also, in terms of everyone is given the same 24 hours in a day, and you're trying to maximize what you can produce while still maintaining balance. And so, one thing I did not succeed at early on in my career as a professor is saying no to things. I'm a people pleaser by nature, and so when people come to me for assistance or to help with certain tasks, I want to help. I want to be involved, and that can be sometimes to your detriment, because I can be spread too thin, and then all of a sudden I start to forget things, or different responsibilities I have might suffer. So I've become better at delegating and really sort of triaging, if you will, some of the things that need to be done sooner than later, and just being more time efficient.
You took the word right out of my mouth. I was going to say the best word in the English language is no, and the second best is delegate.
Okay, very good.
Well done. Hey, isn't it amazing what happens when these students come in the doors first year, and then you follow them through boards part one, and they get into clinicals, and then by the time they graduate, it's like a complete transformation.
Absolutely. I get to coordinate. I'm the clerkship director for an on-campus rotation in the fourth year. It's an advanced wound care clerkship, but these are fourth year students. So they are out for about a year, and then I get them to come back and work with me. And that's probably one of the most rewarding months, when in 1 year, they've just developed so much in terms of their skill set, hand skills, academics, professionalism, and it's just a different person. And so being able to work with them in that capacity is really rewarding. Another really rewarding thing that I get to experience is when I have a former student presenting something on stage that is just really impressive. And one thing that's I always tell students, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, and they don't necessarily all believe me, but I'm like, your training is better than my training. The things that you're able to do are going to surpass what I'm able to do. And that's what it's all about. And to be able to actually see that come to fruition and to see some of the things that they're publishing on and presenting on and doing research on is rewarding as well.
It's very rewarding. The other thing I was going to mention is the cool thing about residents is they keep you on your toes. So you gotta stay up with everything for sure.
100%.
Oh, that's great. So Leland, let's talk about mentorship. You're a mentor to your students. I mean, your students speak so highly of you, and that's outstanding. Who are your mentors?
Sure. Academically, when I was in my residency training, there's a few individuals that come to mind that really helped to alter the trajectory of my training. And really the first person that comes to mind is Dr. Edgardo Rodriguez. He works in the Chicagoland area as well too. He's an individual that is never fearful to push the limits in terms of what we're able to do. His work ethic is second to none. His patients really looked up to him in terms of his ability to get their health trajectory back on track. And, he was someone, and still to this day is one of those types of doctors that I will call the first time I need help with a case, or if I have some type of situation I don't know how to handle clinically. And that's a thing I think younger practitioners, need to learn. Is like, you don't need to know everything, but be able to use your resources and use your network. It can really help you out in the long term, not just post-residency in those first year or two. So I have no ego. I have no problem asking for help when needed. But yeah, he's definitely one that really came to mind. Number two, in residency, I had the privilege of working in Champaign-Urbana with Dr. Sean Grambart for a couple months.
For sure.
He also was somebody that I looked up to tremendously in terms of what he was able to achieve, really. And I think at that time, a relatively short period of time in terms of nationally, his leadership role within ACFAS and his all of his accolades. So he really helped me out a lot as well too. So yeah, those were two of my main attendings. Another one that I got to work with that was fantastic up in Wisconsin was Dr. Chris Bibbo. He works out in Baltimore now at the Limb Deformity Sinai Institute. I think I'm saying that correctly, hopefully. But yeah, he really challenged us and I think showed me what hard work looks like and what determination and what if you put yourself towards a goal, what you can achieve.
No, absolutely. You would earlier mention that there's only 24 hours in a day, yet I go through your CV and I see all those publications and I see all those lectures. Where do you find time for all of this, Leland? Yeah,
that's a good question. I like lists, and I derive pleasure from checking things off my list. So usually at the beginning of the morning, my kids are a little bit older now. I have a 13 and a 10-year-old. So I have a little bit more time than I used to. So I tend to wake up very early. I do appreciate the morning more than I ever have. So, those morning hours to me are honestly when I'm the most productive and I'm honestly the most creative. So during that day, from 5 to 6:30, 7 a.m., I might think about, what type of content I want to write a blog post on, or what type of content I want to write mock quiz questions for students on, or, how I can be creative. I mean, I think that's the time where I'm the most creative. And then, I think as I've gotten further along in my professional career, I'm just more time efficient and I can multitask a little bit better. But yeah, no, it's really just about being time efficient. Right. I think back to like before I had kids, and my wife and I are like, what did we do on a Saturday when we had the entire day to ourselves? And I can't even remember. Like if I had that much time now, I can't even imagine what I could accomplish. But yeah, it's really just using your time wisely and putting your energy towards things that you're passionate about. And I think you can, if you're passionate about something and it doesn't seem like work, it's more fun. I enjoy it.
Yep. It's funny. I went to a talk at the university a couple nights ago, and Rudy from Notre Dame Hall,
Sure.
Fame and Fortune was there, and he was very similar. He talked about when you're excited about doing something, it's not even work, and I could relate to that. The other thing you mentioned, I think, is important for me. If I was doing rounds, if I did rounds in the morning, they went twice as fast as if I waited till later in the day. I was just more efficient in the morning.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that was a change in the office I work in now, the clerkship office. I think the individuals that worked in the office were much more efficient at night. And I'm like, don't call me at 10 p.m. if you want important things to get done. Call me at 7 a.m. Like that's where I'm going to be more productive. So I'm very much a morning person.
You and I are exactly the same. So let me ask you, you had touched on this earlier about COVID, right? And, that was a shock to everybody's system in so many ways. And there's pros and cons in the educational world. I mean, in the beginning, it was hard and it was very difficult to make the transition. But now I'm seeing things like what we're doing right here on Zoom, reaching out to students and having meetings with them in their third and fourth year that we really weren't doing before. Well, what are your thoughts on that, on the benefits of COVID as opposed to the downside of COVID?
Yeah, I think that forced distance type learning did force us to climb that learning curve much more quickly than we would have otherwise. And we were probably heading in that direction in terms of using some technology. I remember years ago, pre-COVID, our college every Tuesday morning used to do it was called the Train Conference, which was Tuesday rounds and interprofessional networking, I think is what it stood for. But basically, every Tuesday we would have a conference with Western University going over a GME topic of the month, and we would have student debates over Zoom. This was pre-pandemic. So credit to them. They were ahead of their time. This was sponsored. This was Western University. This was all them. Right. I think we were heading in that direction, not necessarily entirely, but in terms of the benefits now, yeah, absolutely. We're even things around the university run more efficiently. For example, if we were to have a committee meeting over a lunch hour and I have to be at the hospital, instead of physically being there, I can just be on my phone and listen in and interject when need be, but we don't all have to physically be in the same space. So I think that has definitely built more efficiency into our workday. In terms of education, I'm still very much a in-person. I would prefer to be in person when possible. I find it very difficult to engage and challenge and really interact with students via a virtual setting, but it definitely comes in handy when you're trying to do maybe one-on-one tutoring or help a student study and prepare for an exam, or let's say 7 p.m. and we need to review before the next day. That's where it really becomes, I think, a technology that is very helpful. So that's been really helpful. I know there are some courses here on campus as well, too, that have found it very useful to continue to use Zoom and other technologies such as that. For example, when you're trying to annotate and read X-rays or MRIs, it becomes very helpful to be on a Zoom call where each person can have their own screen and they can mark up the screen as they're reading an X-ray versus everyone in the same room. And you're looking at a projector and one person is speaking, but everyone else has to pay attention and some aren't very close to the screen. It becomes much more helpful in certain courses. Yeah. Student recruitment and admissions and interviewing has become much more efficient as well, too. Instead of having to travel across country, we can conduct virtual interviews, which are nice as well too, and really economically beneficial. So you don't have to necessarily spend a lot of money traveling. I think that's helpful for a lot of prospective students as well.
Oh, there's no doubt. In fact, when I interview students and I do a Dean's Chat, we call it Dean's Chat also, I always encourage them to come visit, right? I mean, so they know what they're getting into. But that initial interview and just getting the feel of what they're, the profession in the school and the kind of the culture of that school. I agree with you. I think it's so important. I don't know if your students are doing this the first couple of years, but I don't know if we're ever going to get away from technology and the basic sciences. They play back the lectures at 1.5 or 2 times speed. And then it's a shift for them because when they go into the podiatry courses, we've got the labs and, it's hard to do a lab on Zoom,
Absolutely.
And that from Durham and everything.
Absolutely.
All right. That sounds good. So let me ask you this. When a student is inquiring about podiatric medicine and a career in podiatric medicine, what do you tell them?
Sure. I think I start out with the sky's the limit. I mean, the amount of training and opportunities that students have today, I think, are fantastic. The parity in residency training, I think, has never been as strong as it has been. Even the advanced training beyond that, in terms of fellowships and really specialized niche type surgical training, is never been this strong. So I think the opportunities are really endless. And to see, again, like we talked about a little bit earlier, to see some of the accomplishments that our students are achieving today are really inspiring. So I think that's number one. Number two is the different facets in which you can work in are, I think, very intriguing to a prospective student. Meaning, you don't necessarily have to be a advanced, complex surgeon, deformity surgeon, traumatologist. You can be a clinician first. You don't necessarily have to do surgery. You can do sports medicine. We have a number of providers, I'm sure, like out on the West Coast too, that are just focused on like pediatrics. You could do hospital-based wound care, infectious disease type specialty. So there's so many different ways that you can take this field, which I think is really rewarding. So I think that's number one. Number two, the interprofessional manner in which we work is fantastic. It allows collaboration, it allows professional growth. So I think that model in which we practice medicine today is really helpful as well too, to continue to grow and develop as a provider and as a physician. So I think this particular specialty provides students a lot of flexibility, but a very rewarding career path that can really set you up on a good path in life.
Absolutely. What are your long-term goals? What do you see yourself doing in the next 5 to 10 years, Leland?
Professionally or personally?
Let's start professionally. Then I got the personal stuff we'll get to in a minute.
Sure. In terms of professionally, I think, definitely I'm very, very happy where I'm at. I love coming to work. I can't see a change in my career path in terms of academic role. The relationships I have with our students here are something I don't take for granted. I really do appreciate and feel kind of very privileged to be in the role that I am in. So I definitely see myself here for the long term in an academic role. In terms of my professional goals, I hope to have more independent research. We have a couple studies that we're working on that we've got IRB approval now for. A lot of the research I've done so far, and I really, really thank our Dean Wu. She's really been another mentor for me. Oh my gosh, I didn't mention her. I apologize earlier. But when I came to campus, I did come to her and I said, Dr. Wu, I want to be more skilled and more knowledgeable in research. And she brought me in right away and made me a sub-investigator on a number of our clinical trials, provided opportunities for me to become published and work on some projects with her. So another very important mentor of mine. But being able to be involved in my own research is something that I want to be able to do. We did a systematic review and meta-analysis a couple of years ago on the optimal nutrition for diabetics. And that was really fun to be able to go out and, instead of me presenting other people's research, let me present my own research and things that we've been able to discover here on campus. We have another one that we're working on now too, but I think I'm just at the cusp in terms of my my involvement with clinical trials and research. Another personal goal of mine is to become board certified through the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. Lifestyle medicine is something that I really am passionate about too. I speak a lot on nutrition and how you can really harness your health through lifestyle choices and nutritional choices and dietary choices. So that's something I've been lecturing on and speaking on for quite a number of years as well too. So I definitely had that goal as well too.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'm sure you will attain all of those goals over time.
I appreciate that.
So let's talk about the other side of life, right? You work hard, you work long hours, you're taking care of students. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, so I have a wife. She works in research. So she works in pharmaceutical research and publications. So she's she has her master's in public health. So she's very skilled at everything involving research. So she's been a very helpful mind that I can pick as well too at home in terms of navigating that world. I have two girls, two daughters, 13 and 10-year-old. So one daughter's in 8th grade, the other one is in 5th grade. So almost a high schooler and a middle schooler, which is hard to believe. So that takes obviously a lot of my time outside of school, and I spend most of my time outside of school with family. And I've learned that 8th grade math is very difficult. So I know how to get the answer. I don't know necessarily how to get to the answer. So I have to brush up on my algebra and my trigonometry and my high school based math. But it's a lot of fun. I love this stage of life, and definitely wouldn't trade it for anything.
That's great. What do you do for, obviously your family is first and foremost, but are there other passions you have? What do you do to kind of recharge the battery?
Yeah, absolutely. My personality is I am either all in or not at all. So I love running. Distance running is something I got into a little while ago. So I got to do a Chicago marathon, a number of half marathons. Still to this day, I'm active in that role. In fact, this last week we had a lab on campus, and one of the reps from the company is an ultra marathoner. And that was something that I really thought I wanted to do. Still perhaps, but he was talking about different 100-mile foot races that just intrigues me. I feel like, how far can you push the human body? Like, that's something that intrigues me. So maybe someday, if I have more time to train, that might be something that I would work towards. But I find that as a stress reliever. At 5 a.m., I'm that person outside that's probably jogging, or I find my energy and mood for the day is so much better when I'm able to get some type of cardiovascular workout in the morning. Another passion of mine is playing guitar. I'm very much an amateur guitarist, but I love it. Last year, I got my first opportunity to perform in front of a live audience, which was a lot of fun. We have a dance on campus called Dance for Diabetes. So I got to perform with another faculty member and a few students, which was a ton of fun. What an adrenaline rush that was. But again, that's sort of another outlet that I turn to in terms of really just, I don't meditate, but I think that's probably as close to meditation as I can get. I can really gather my thoughts and breathe and relax. And I find a lot of joy doing that as well, too.
Well, that's great. So if I asked you to play a song on a guitar, what's your favorite song to play?
Good question. Favorite song to play. I like to play a lot of songs off the Into the Wild soundtrack. It's all Eddie Vedder. It's a lot of finger picking type music. I usually find myself playing that first. I'm a 90s kid, so I like Pearl Jam, Foo Fighters, so some alternative rock, but all acoustic. So everything I play is on acoustic. So sort of an acoustic rendition of rock songs is a lot of fun for me to play. But a lot of finger picking. I like to do a lot of finger picking guitar.
That's great. I'm starting to show my age now. When I was a resident, that's when Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Soundgarden and all of them came out. So
exactly.
That's outstanding. Well, that's cool that you're doing all that running too. So for our audience, tell us something about Dr. Jaffe that nobody knows, your students included.
Okay. Wow. That nobody knows. That's a tough question. Wow. That's one I have to think about for a minute. One that nobody knows. Can I come back to you on that one?
You may.
I'm gonna have to think about that one for a minute. Okay. But I promise you, I will answer that.
Okay. Well, let's turn the tables a little bit. You have a question for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what was your pathway from reaching the level that you've been able to achieve being a dean of a podiatric medical college?
That's a cool story. I, like you, was in practice. I started a residency program with Dr. Dan Hatch up in Greeley. Had all the students and the residents and just loved it. I absolutely loved training residents in surgery and then students, of course. And then when the Barry University position opened in 2010, I found out about it at a residency training committee meeting because Dr. Vardal had gone to Barry. So I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And I, of course, I didn't know what I was getting into, right? I thought I understood a little bit of accreditation because of the residency situation. But Leland, it's like you don't really aren't even, it's not even a goal. It's not something in your purview. And then I applied, and then, you got to be careful what you ask for, right? Next thing you know, you're down in Miami interviewing, and I'm selling my part of the practice to my partner, and moving to Miami. So that was fabulous. I did that for 4 years. Had some family things going on with my parents. My mom had Alzheimer's, my dad had vascular dementia. Barry University was so good to me. They let me be the senior director of research for the university, so I could work from Colorado, where my parents were, 3 out of 4 weeks a month. Wow. So that was very neat. And then when Dr. Page, Jeffrey Page, who was the founding dean here in Arizona, when he was going to retire, I'd worked with him a lot. He was one of my mentors. In fact, I worked on my first patient with him in California when I was a student. And one thing led to another, and I became ultimately the dean here in Arizona. So
fantastic.
It's been a good ride.
You're doing such great work, and the energy that you put out there in this space is fantastic, and we really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate it. And likewise, I mean, that's one of the things that attracted me to giving you a call and saying, hey, Leland, let's do a Dean's Chat together.
I love it. I love it.
All right. So did you have enough time to think about something that people don't know about you?
Oh, my goodness. I'm totally on the spot now. Wow. My goodness, I do not have a good answer to this. Well, I feel like I'm an open book.
Well, I thought maybe you said you'd be like the lead in a big play or something when you're in high school.
Oh, no. I mean, one of the, no, not a lead in a big play. Like if I could be, if I could achieve that level of like elite status in anything, it would definitely be more of a performer of some sort. I love watching, a band I love is Foo Fighters. And one of the best things about some of their shows is that he usually brings a fan on stage that kind of live out their fantasy of being in a rock band, so that I feel like that would be, what I'd love to achieve. But that's, more. I did have a patient though that every time he saw me, and he had a long-term chronic venous leg ulcer, and every visit he would come and bring his guitar and we'd play some music together in the treatment room, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
So that was cool. Yeah. So, it's fun to be able to share that type of experience with patients. But yeah, no, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great. Well, yeah. I wanted to congratulate you on all you're doing in the academic space, but also on social media, Leland. Mm-hmm. I hand my hats off to you. That website you're developing and your vision for that is going to help a lot of people. So congratulations.
I appreciate that. Yeah. It's all, and to anyone out there listening, like it's all very new to me. This is on the job training. We talked about a roadmap previously. There was absolutely no roadmap to building a website. So this was very much just trying trial and error and seeing what works, what doesn't, and really just trying to put as much good energy out there as I can.
Fantastic. How do people get a hold of you, Leland?
So I can be reached via email, just leland.jaffe@rosalindfranklin.edu. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. If you go to the website that you mentioned earlier, just lelandjaffedpm.com, I have a number of different contacts on there as well too that you could reach out to me. Instagram is this Leland_Jaffe DPM, and I am very good at responding to direct messages if people do want to reach out to me on that site as well too. So any and all the above would be fantastic.
Well, thank you for all you do. And thanks for making time to join me on Dean's Chat, Leland. I appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. I really appreciate the invite. This was a lot of fun.
You're welcome. And then, Leland, I'm going to send off one of these Dean's Chat cups to you so that you can get those early mornings going, right, at 5 a.m.
I enjoy waking up to have my coffee, so I look forward to that.
All right. Sounds good. And to all of our listeners out there, if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please give us a 5-star rating. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, please become a subscriber. And until next week, cheers, everybody.